Now.
Okay, I had just written a screen. This is a private presentation of a spoken words in which Sheldon from Big Bang Theory gets to meet Archie Bunker. Can you imagine how well that'll go down?
Oh, he said go down.
I had just written a screenplay which I wanted to be published into a movie or a play. So I go by the Guthrie Theater and I told them that I wrote a screenplay called Return of the Living Dead Fetuses, which was about a girl who gives herself an abortion by sticking a coat hanger up her twat. And then a minister from a Baptist church finds out, in which he performs an exorcism at the scene of the abortion, in which he then goes into a trance and he jerks off on the remains of the aborted fetus. After I describe my screenplay, they tell me that they are not interested, and this is while the Little House on the Prairie play was going on. So I then go on to tell them that in my previous lifetime I was Laura Ingalls Wilder, and I told them that I couldn't afford to see the play because it was before I was collecting disability, but they didn't give a fuck. And I asked them if they would give me a free ticket, and they refused to give me a free ticket. These uptight theaters. I am sick and tired of these motherfuckers with a stick up their ass. And all their fucking bullshit. And someone told me that if I lived in Los Angeles, I would have a good chance to get it published. So I said, fuck this shit, I'm moving to Los Angeles. So I go online to check out the rents, and the rents for apartments are fucking horrible. Those greedy, money grubbing scumfuck landlords. I can't take this fucking shit anymore. I then found out that Sheldon Cooper was looking for a roommate, but I would be living with three other guys, but at least the rent would be reasonable, and I could take my cat with. The problem is I don't get along with people very well, very good, and things turn to shit very quickly, and I thought that Sheldon would work out good because he has Asperger's, and they made a TV show about him called Big Bang Theory. Well, what happened is I was smelling my cat's ears at the same end of the couch and time that he likes to eat his breakfast, and I told him that I really enjoy smelling the cat's ears, especially when a bunch of brown stuff gets on my nose. And he said, "What is wrong with you?" And then we got into a big fight and he threw me out, and where the fuck am I going to live now? Well, it turns out that Penny, the girl who lived across the hall, had moved out, and they decided to convert her apartment to Section 8, and I was able to move in there. What happened is Penny decided to drop a few hits of acid, and then G.G. Allen appeared, and he said, "I would love to have a bowel movement on you, baby." And she rubbed excrement all over herself and the walls of her apartment while she masturbated, and when her landlord came in, she was evicted for having shit smeared all over her apartment. When I came in to look at the apartment, I told them that it smells like shit in here, and they told me, don't worry, we'll fumigate it and sanitize it before you move in. I was so happy I found my own apartment in Los Angeles with affordable rent. Sheldon apologized for the way that he treated me, and he admitted that he has plenty of habits that would drive people crazy, such as he likes to keep logs of his bowel movements. I showed Sheldon my spoken words, and he absolutely loved them, and he loved my Return of the Living Dead Fetuses story, and I told him that someone told him that in Los Angeles I have a very good... I told him that in Los Angeles I have a good chance of getting my screenplay getting made into a play or a theatrical production, and he told me that whoever told me that was a bunch of fucking bullshit. He told me that they are having a contest for the most vulgar but creative writer in New York, at the same time that he would be attending a Star Trek convention. I said there ain't a place in New York that I could afford to stay, and he told me that he knew this guy. His name is Mike Stivic, and he lives out in Queens, and me and him could stay with him. But he ain't sure if things would work out very well with his father-in-law. As you know, that New York is a very liberal city, and during the last presidential election, there is only one person who voted for Donald Trump, and that person was Archie Bunker. When I get there, Archie Bunker asked me, "So, what brings you to New York?" And I told him that a contest is going on for the most vulgar but creative writer, and I told him about my Return of the Living Dead Fetuses play, and I told him about the girl who gives herself an abortion by sticking a coat hanger up her twat, and a minister performs an exorcism at the scene of the abortion and jerks off on the remains of the aborted fetuses, and then Archie Bunker went fucking apeshit. And he said, "You are a sick weirdo! This is a Christian home that believes in family values. Get the fuck out of my house." Archie then went on to call me a sick fuck. Edith, his wife, then said, "Pat, I need to talk to you." Edith said, "Please don't talk about abortions and joking off on aborted fetuses in front of Archie." I asked, "Fuck that shit, I give up my freedom of speech." And he said, "Archie could throw you out, and you know how expensive it is in New York. I want to see you get your spoken words published." And if that's not enough, Sheldon told Mike that he wasn't feeling very well, and he told Mike that he had an upset stomach, and he told him that he was shitting out diarrhea, and that he was suffering from so much anxiety, and he told Mike that it was all Archie Bunker's fault that he ended up getting diarrhea. And Mike then went on to say, "I can understand how being with Archie Bunker can cause you to get diarrhea." Edith said, "Sheldon, would it make you feel any better if I gave you some coffee?" And Sheldon said, "The last time I wish I knew how to imitate Sheldon's voice. I can't do it." And Sheldon said, "The last time I had some coffee, I lost control of my bowels and I ended up shitting out diarrhea in my pants." Edith then said, "Maybe it would be a good idea that you don't have any." At that point, Sheldon felt more horrible pains in his abdominal area, and he had to run to the bathroom to shit out more diarrhea. As soon as Sheldon was done shitting out diarrhea, he went on to mention, "I like to keep logs of what my bowel movements look like, but I forgot to take it on this trip. I hope that I remember to mention that my diarrhea looked like it had yellow ribbons floating in it with white bubbles in the middle of it." Archie said, "Weirdo, the warrior don't want to hear about your loose, repulsive stools." And the meathead said, "Archie, Pat and Sheldon are on the autism spectrum, and they will say things at times that are inappropriate. Now, what's your excuse, Arch?" And Archie said, "Back in my day, there was no such thing as autism, as weirdos like you were locked in a rubber room where yous belong. And don't you ever shit out diarrhea in my toilet ever again. I want these weirdos to get the fuck out of my house." And Mike Sheldon decided to go out for a while figuring out that the best thing to do was get away from Archie for a while. When we returned, we opened up the door and we saw Archie completely naked with his legs spread, with a plastic penis pressed up against with his penis. We saw Archie Bunker naked with his legs spread, with his penis pressed up against his chair, and he had a plastic penis stuck up his ass. And Sheldon said, "I haven't seen anything this revolting since my cousin lost control of his bowels in a swimming pool, and I saw worms crawling around on his stool." Edith came home a few minutes later, and Mike said, "Edith, do you know that your husband, Mr. Family Values, enjoys sticking dildos up his butt?" And Edith said, "Oh, yeah." And Archie said, "Put a lid on it, Edith." Then Edith said, "Mike, what's a dildo?" And Archie said that he puts those things up his bunghole because it gives him relief from his hemorrhoids. And Archie said, "Edith, stifle." And Sheldon forgot that Archie was naked with his penis pressed up against his chair, so he sat in it, and then Edith came running into the room and said, "Archie, why is there sperm all over your chair? And Sheldon abruptly got up and he noticed that his pants had a bunch of sticky stuff on it. And then he said, "Oh dear Lord, I'm going to have a hazmat team to disinfect my pants." And well, anyway, I got my Return to the Living Dead Fetuses story published, and I got paid millions of dollars for it, and I am so happy. How many minutes is it?
9:46.
Okay.